There's never really been a shortage of mid-range, affordable devices in the Android space, but 2020 has been an interesting year. Leave it to Apple to throw down a gauntlet like this, the iPhone SE. It might be a throwback, and it might not be particularly revolutionary, but it does one thing really well. It makes a smooth iOS experience more accessible than ever. Android comes in plenty of mid-range devices, but none of them seem to match the kind of choices Apple made with the SE, until now. OnePlus's highly anticipated and slightly exclusive OnePlus Nord has finally arrived, literally stepping up to the plate and challenging the iPhone SE in many aspects, including the price. Let's see how they stack up. This is Pocketnow and I'm Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? This is the OnePlus Nord versus the iPhone SE. Now, for a long time now, diehard fans of OnePlus have begged the company to bring back the philosophy that made them popular in the first place: high power for a low price. The OnePlus One will still be near and dear to many people's hearts, but over the last few years, OnePlus seemed to focus more on matching their rival flagships rather than killing them. And then 2020 happened, and OnePlus decided to apply years of growth and experience to a brand new line, one that extolled the virtues of the early OnePlus years. This is the result, the OnePlus Nord, a phone with many key features and experiences of the mainline phones for at least half the price. Whether or not they succeed at this mission is up to you, but personally, I think that anyone up for a good enough phone can look at the OnePlus Nord as a hell of a contender. But that sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? That's because Apple has a similar story to tell with the iPhone SE. Going back to the affordable price point made perfect sense because, well, they've done it before. And years of building up their own spec sheets helped the company line up their priorities to make a cheaper iPhone. Do you want to poke at the user's nostalgia? Check. Take advantage of an abundant current component market? Check, check. And thus put just enough of the flagship line in the spin-off to entice those waiting for an affordable upgrade? Well, check, check, check. So whether or not they did it by design, the story of the OnePlus Nord actually bears striking resemblances to the iPhone SE. But it's not that we're complaining. By now you're probably very familiar with the iPhone SE stats and specs. It is a throwback design bringing back the iPhone 6 and 7 designs with updated internals. So what I'm going to do in much of this versus video is talk about the features of the iPhone and how OnePlus addresses those features in their own way. The obvious difference between these two phones is the size. The iPhone SE draws from an old pedigree of already small devices, which makes it easy to handle for, well, just about anyone, but at the cost of some screen and some viewing experiences. Bringing back the iconic home button and the fingerprint reader combo meant that in the name of symmetry, the 4.7-inch screen has more bezel than most modern smartphones. It's a Retina IPS display at 1334 by 750 resolution, bringing vibrant colors and good detail unless you are really that spec hungry. Contrast that to the more screen-forward OnePlus Nord. This is a 6.44-inch Full HD AMOLED display at 90Hz refresh rate, and honestly, it ticks a bunch of boxes in the modern smartphone age. At this point, high refresh rate screens are just hard to put aside because they make interfaces glide so beautifully. And as an AMOLED display, vivid colors are accompanied by great contrast. And look, no bezels. Just this pill cutout at the top that is, in and of itself, a bit of a one-up on the iPhone. In this case, larger actually means better for the viewing experience, but the Nord actually doesn't overdo it in the handling department. I would actually say that this is about as big as a smartphone should get before ergonomics start to diminish. OnePlus did a really good job of maximizing their extra room to work, including things like an in-display fingerprint reader and another one-up on the iPhone and the face unlock capabilities. So back on the topic of how similar these phones can be, the frames actually show similar stories. Both phones have silence toggles, they lack headphone jacks, and they both support fast charging. Now, the stereo speakers of the iPhone SE manage to sound better than the single speaker, even though it's loud, on the OnePlus Nord. But then again, the Nord has the bigger and longer lasting battery that gets charged up at 30 watts compared to the iPhone's 18. Now, a final note here on build quality. I did drop this now repaired iPhone SE and I cracked the screen pretty easily, but who knows how the Gorilla Glass on either side of the OnePlus Nord will fare. What plenty of people are talking about right now is the shined up plastic frame of the OnePlus. Okay, putting that up against the aluminum frame of the iPhone might seem like an unfair fight, but seriously, the Nord doesn't feel cheap. Will this get damaged more easily from a drop? Maybe, but who knows? It's not like I'm going to test out that theory right now. Just know that even if the materials of the OnePlus Nord might not be super premium, it doesn't come off that way once the phone is in your hand. We can actually say the same about general performance, which is often the Achilles heel of the Android mid-range device. After all, Apple just went ahead and said, why not, to putting the latest Bionic A13 in a phone that's supposed to be under $400. But thankfully, Qualcomm has done an almost surprising bang-up job with the Snapdragon 765G. Back when that processor was first announced, I was happy to see a more affordable SoC, but in every phone that I've tried it in since, I have been very pleasantly surprised. Now, of course, pitting these processors against one another is literally apples and, well, Nord oranges. Apple even outfits their chip with further specs that Android fans routinely scoff at: 3GB of RAM and a base 64GB of storage. But it is running iOS, a completely different beast to Android, even if it's getting some features that people have enjoyed from Google for some time now. And yet OnePlus has grown their version of Android into one of the most beloved user interfaces, Oxygen OS. It's generally simpler, easier on the eyes, and pleasantly minimalistic compared to other UIs. Animations are smooth, helped along by the already mentioned 90Hz refresh rate, and it's just got a bit more style that has garnered multitudes of fans. Saying it's the best version of Android is obviously a personal, subjective matter, but I do think that if I had to pick one Android UI to go toe-to-toe with the "it just works" mentality of iOS, well, I would pick Oxygen. And the Snapdragon 765G helps make that so, with 6 or 8GB of RAM and storage that starts at either 64 or 128GB depending on your region. Oxygen OS is also still gaming forward on the Nord, with gaming and Fanatic modes backing up the G in 765G. So far, every choice from the case to the SoC in the OnePlus Nord does well to provide a reliable and very smooth Android experience, and those are the same feelings that people who love the iPhone SE get when they use this phone. Which of course leads us to, unsurprisingly, the real differentiator here, the cameras. The 48-megapixel main sensor of the OnePlus Nord goes up against a 12-megapixel shooter in the iPhone SE. Honestly, taken in a vacuum, the main shooters do a great job at capturing photos, with the iPhone inching ahead in the video department mainly because of its smart HDR. It is admirable how much focus Apple can put on a single shooter to perform as well as it possibly can. OnePlus manages to compete in this vacuum, but their target wasn't about singularity, it was about choice. To that end, the OnePlus Nord just gives you more options, with an 8-megapixel ultra-wide, a 5-megapixel depth sensor, and a 2-megapixel macro backing up the main sensor. Even without the macro and depth sensors, which, let's be honest, can be shaved off the phone without anyone really feeling like they're losing much, the ultra-wide camera is itself a good addition that brings plenty to the table. Its picture results could be a little bit better, and its video results in 4K can be a bit grainy, but the fact that you can use it at all gives the Nord a leg up. In tight quarters, it's the OnePlus Nord that's able to get you more in your frame compared to the iPhone. And the same goes for the front cameras. The iPhone is already at a disadvantage with just a 7-megapixel shooter that does well enough for casual selfies and 1080p video, but OnePlus put a 32-megapixel main sensor and another 8-megapixel ultra-wide for even more choice. Both lenses are even capable of 4K video recording. And in terms of focal length, the iPhone kind of splits the difference between the two Nord lenses, so it's not like the lens is so tight that you can't share the spotlight. Ultimately, though, I'm still pleasantly surprised that OnePlus had enough forward thinking to make this the front-facing camera package. Now, the Nord won't be considered the best camera in Android by a long shot, but we have to remember that this phone is meant to be a good, affordable shooter for the casual user. It just focused more on capability than it did on honing in on the quality of a single sensor. That was Apple's intention. And even if you don't get a ton of options with the iPhone, like the lack of a night mode is the biggest omission, at least you can be certain that the photo or video you do take will not be too far off from the expected Apple quality. So clearly, these phones with similar stories have different priorities. We've gone through all the main points of each phone to illustrate this, but one important aspect of this comparison is either phone's availability. The OnePlus Nord is a return to affordable form, one that many users have wanted, but quite a few of them won't get to enjoy. We're hoping for a version of this phone in the States, but for now, let's take a look at where these phones actually clash. Compared to the very wide reach of the iPhone SE, the Nord is only available in select markets in Europe and Asia, and I would say that seems very deliberate. India, OnePlus's obvious target based on the New Beginnings documentary videos, does have the iPhone SE listed on Apple's website for 42,500 rupees. Now, converted to US dollars, that's $567. An almost $200 hike from the price I paid for mine. Meanwhile, OnePlus made a specific version of the Nord with 6GB of RAM and 64GB of storage for 24,999 rupees. You can already see where this is going, but let's still convert that to US dollars anyway, $333. Take into consideration that there's a €399 starting price in Europe, and it's clear that OnePlus is gunning for Apple with what we could call their mid-range killer. And they're doing that by providing many of the aspects Android users might come to expect. A nice display, good performance, a sizable battery, and shutterbug options. Meanwhile, the iPhone SE is all about setting a low barrier of entry into their walled garden while optimizing the available parts along the way. Unless I was already biting deep into the Apple ecosystem already, I would give the OnePlus Nord a good hard look, because in most places it succeeds, especially in making sure that the wallet isn't making the biggest compromise. Let me know which one of these you would actually pick. I know that not everyone has both of these choices in their markets, but if you do, does the undercutting price of the OnePlus Nord entice you enough to get it over the iPhone SE? Let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. At the very least, drop some likes on this video, and you can subscribe to the Pocketnow channel because videos are coming out pretty much every single day. From there, we're going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in our next video.